Hey everybody, what's going on? So as you can tell behind me, this is the only 24-inch iMac M1 edition, the brand new one in orange, or I'm gonna call it coral. Nonetheless, we'll talk about all that in just a bit. But here are some things you need to know about the iMac before picking one up. Check them out. All right, guys, before we kick things off, I do want to let you know I'm not paid or sponsored for this review. These are my thoughts and my thoughts only. And I'm not going to go through all the specs, because if you want to know the specs, Apple's got a beautiful website, okay? I'm going to talk to you guys about what it's like to use and some of the points I think are more valuable for you if you're going to pick up one of these and things that you should know about, all right? So first off, I want to talk about the packaging on this. Just to cut things short, this is the most beautiful packaging I've seen on any computer to date. It cuts color coordinated to the iMac. It's beautiful, it's recyclables, it's just all that sustainability, it's all in there, but it is awesome to see. And it just gives you that whole experience when you first unbox the iMac. Like, you just have this big smile on your face, at least for me, that's what it was like. The colors, as good as they are on the website, they're even better in person. Case in point, I got the orange variant here. And orange would not be my first choice in getting an iMac, but when I open up the box, and I saw it's like a deep coral color. And it's just got these, it's multi-dimensional in terms of the back, the stand area, this peach color here, the white frame around the display. It just all works and it's beautiful. Even the trackpad, the keyboard, the mouse, it's all color coordinated. Even the cable is color coordinated. So it's this whole thing that it's gonna be hard for you guys to choose. And I would recommend going to the Apple store first, if you can do so, if there's one near you, to see all the colors and then decide, because you might be surprised. You might go for a color that you weren't necessarily going to go for in the beginning because they just look so different in person and they actually look better, in my personal opinion. The next things we got to talk about is just how beautiful this thing is. I mean, Apple makes great looking products. We know this, but this is stunning. It's really thin. It's compact in its size and it's really lightweight. Honestly, you can pick this up and you can move it around with you. I don't know if you want to travel with it. Some people do, but you can. It's actually very lightweight. You got 4 ports on the back of it. You got 2 USB-C 3 ports. You got 2 Thunderbolt 3 USB 4 ports on this. So you're pretty much good to go. You might want to get a dock if you want to get it. It's in the back, so it's a little bit hard to see in the beginning. I personally would recommend getting a dock. But they're there for you. Of course, you got a headphone jack there. You can plug in your speakers if you want to do that. So the auxiliary input, you're good to go. But it's so thin and it's just beautiful. So you got a 1080p HD webcam on this now, which is great because a lot of people, we were complaining, why is Apple putting on these like 720 low res webcams? We're working from home now. We need high resolution, and the front facing camera on the iPhones are fantastic, and that's small. They could put in this and they did. So hats off to Apple for that. It makes a big difference in terms of you're doing your web conferencing and chatting with that. It's fantastic. The display on this, 4.5K Retina display. It's beautiful. Colors are great. It's bright enough. You're gonna have no issues with this at all. As a matter of fact, you might even want a larger display. You go, why did Apple only give us 24 inches? Now 24 is great for most of us out there, but I've been spoiled with larger sized displays, and yeah, I would take a larger iMac if they made one. Maybe they will in the future, who knows? But this is a beautiful display. But besides that, I mean, everything, as I mentioned, color coordinated. It's all wireless except for the MagSafe cord in the back of it. It's just a very simple setup, but it's one of those things that I think that if you want something that's minimalist for your home or your office or your studio, and you don't want to fuss with a lot of cables, and you want it to look really good, and maybe your configuration set up that you're going to see the back of your computer as well as the front, you're going to really love these iMacs. They really are that good. So now let's talk about configuration on this thing, because this is where it's going to be a little bit challenging for a lot of you out there to figure out, like, do I go 7 core, 8 core, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of RAM? How much storage do I go for? So let's chat about that right now. Now, the first thing you gotta know about the M1 chip is that it's got unified RAM inside of it. So it's configured differently than PC laptops and desktops. So when people mention 8 gigabytes of RAM, normally PC people would be like, oh, how can I run anything off 8 gigabytes of RAM? But because it's unified RAM, and what I mean by unified RAM is that the RAM is on the same chipset as the is the M1 chip. So it's sort of like the pathway for them to talk to each other and to share information is much shorter. So you don't need that much in terms of numbers versus, let's say, dedicated RAM that's outside of the chipset that you would get on a PC for that matter. So 8 gigabytes performs like a 16 gigabyte RAM configuration, and 16 gigabytes performs closer to 32 gigabytes. You know what I'm talking about? If you were to compare PC to Apple with this M1 chip, this is a very efficient setup within Apple's M1 chipset. So for a lot of you out there, the 8 gigabyte version is going to be more than plenty. And even 7 core versus 8 core, you're not going to notice that much of a difference if you're just browsing the web or doing Word documents or doing basic schoolwork or watching videos. I mean, save your money, get the basic iMac, and then spend a little extra if you want external storage, or if you want to get, another desk for that matter, or another setup. Put your money towards that versus trying to max it out. Now, the only reason I would say to max out this iMac in terms of 8 core and 16 gigabytes of RAM, you're doing Final Cut Pro editing, Premiere Pro, heavy Photoshop, AutoCAD, all that stuff that's gonna really push the system, then I would go 8 cores, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then of course I would up my storage. Because the one thing you need to know about these iMacs, unlike the older ones, is that you cannot change your RAM or change your storage once you get it from Apple. It's built in, it's on the board, and that is it. So you really got to take in consideration how you're going to use the iMac today and how you're going to use it in a couple years from now. But so on my variant, I've got 512 gigabytes. And for me, because I do a lot of photo editing with medium format, I'm shooting around 100 megapixels. So my images are around 200 megabytes raw, 600 megabytes in a TIFF file format. And I'm also editing in 4K, 6K, 8K. 512 is not going to last me. So I personally would opt for maybe 1 terabyte and then get an SSD drive. Or if I have the means, I would go 2 terabytes and then get an SSD drive. Now people will say, save your money, get the SSD drive, don't worry about it. But here's the thing that I've realized. Yes, these Thunderbolt SSD drives are very fast, but it's not the same as one that's built in onto the board, right? It can be almost there, but never as fast. So now that brings us into performance. Now, to give you the Clip Notes version of the performance of this iMac, if you've used a 13-inch MacBook Pro M1 variant, the performance is relatively the same. It's fast, it's efficient. I've never heard the fans kick on. It runs Final Cut with ease, Photoshop with ease, Lightroom is getting better. Adobe hasn't updated all their applications for the M1 chip as of yet. I think Premiere Pro is still outstanding. So, personally, I would just move over to Final Cut Pro. Your life will be a lot easier. Trust me. Your rendering times, like I mentioned before in my previous MacBook Pro review that I did, is that I had about an 8 gigabyte file. It was all 4K that I shot for a review, edited it myself, and I rendered it out into 4K, and my rendering time was around 15 to 20 minutes for an 8 gigabyte file. Now in Premiere, I would have to go out for dinner, have some drinks, come back, and maybe it would be done. On Final Cut, it's very efficient, and the fans weren't even kicking on. That's how good the M1 chipset is. Photoshop is fantastic with it as well. Lightroom is also good. You also have it running this virtual world with Rosetta 2. So if you have programs that are not designed for the M1 chip, they still run relatively well. Case in point, I use Capture One. Capture One is updating their software very soon for the M1 chip, and it runs pretty good on this chipset, I have to be honest with you. It's a little slow at times, but I'm also using pretty high resolution files. So that could be also an issue, but my day-to-day usage is no issues at all with Capture One. And you'll find this a lot with a lot of other software out there, that the Rosetta 2 does a phenomenal job in terms of, transcoding that software to work on the M1 chipset. And you don't even notice that it's working. It just works, which is great. And also in terms of gaming. So if you're not into intensive games out there, if you're using Apple Arcade, or if you want to play a little bit of Fortnite, no issues at all. Should be fine. Now, if you're an intensive gamer, then I think you might want to look elsewhere for the time being, unless the rumored M1X chip or whatever you're going to call it comes out, and maybe they'll have a different graphics card configuration with that, and maybe that'll just blow everybody's doors off. But until that happens, casual gaming, yes. Productivity, yes. Video editing, yes. You can do 8K on this, no issues at all. Multiple 4K tracks, no issues at all. It works well, especially in Final Cut Pro and your day-to-day tasks. It works with ease. Now, a couple things that I wish were a little bit different on it. Case in point, I'm not a big fan of the white bezels. I'm just not. I prefer a black bezel because it gives you that sense that the screen is larger. White makes things smaller. I know there's companies like D brand out there that do make a skin that you can cover the white. Also, the ports are on the back of this here. And while that's great in terms of, keeping things hidden, from, keeping your desktop looking clean, Apple doesn't make a hub. So you have to buy an external hub. That means you're gonna have to plug something here, or you have to use their dongles, which they made that go into the iPad. You'll have to use it for the back of the iMac. Case in point, for the SD cards, there's no SD card slot on this, so you need a dongle. And it's a little bit kind of flimsy how it hangs there, and it just sort of neither here nor there. So I wish Apple would have come out with a hub. Maybe they will in the future, who knows? Color coordinated hub, that would be ideal. But that's something to take note of. There's no numeric pad on this keyboard here. Some people like that, some people don't. Doesn't really bother me, but it is something to point out. And that's pretty much it. Overall, the iMac is not meant to be the professional pro computer in Apple's lineup. This is meant for day-to-day usage. Yes, you can do some productivity. Yes, you can push it a bit more than you probably would normally push an iMac in previous years. But this is something that's just much more, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's great to have in the house. It's gonna look great in your office, your studio, even in your kitchen. And it's just a beautiful machine.
It's fun.
It's fun, Zachy. That is the word. This computer is fun. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the all-new iMac. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Any questions you have on it, let me know, and I'll try to answer that for you. With that though, stay safe, take care. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video, helps out the channel a lot. We'll chat to you soon. Take care.